Let's get started. So what's going on, everybody? Good morning or good afternoon, I guess, wherever you're at, if you're on the West Coast or if you're on the East Coast. Today I'll be talking about pretty much steps to get to that tech bag. So from the phone screen to negotiations. And so pretty much what I'm going to be doing is walking you through every step in the interview process, and then we'll finish it off with negotiations, which I think a lot of people actually don't do. And it's really important. And this would primarily be taking from my perspective. I'm a back-end engineer. So my name is Judah Okeleye. I'm currently a software engineer at Uber, working on their self-driving cars. From Atlanta, I got my bachelor's and master's from Georgia Tech. And all the roles that I've ever done are back-end engineer. So this is really just like biased towards like full-time software engineering back-end roles. But I will say a lot of these skills and pretty much the interview process, for the most part, for like front-end engineers, for data engineers, it's very similar. It's all going to be some kind of like question related to the field that you're trying to get into. And I think all this is kind of applicable. So yeah. So then going to the next slide, we'll probably be working on the agenda. So pretty much the agenda for today is just like the key success at each step. So the first step in the tech interview process is the phone screen. Second step is the on-site. Third step is negotiations. And then finally, ideally, you get that offer, and then, so you can pop bottles and celebrate. So starting off is the phone screen. So for you guys that don't know what the phone screen is, it's basically a kind of like a quick call, pretty much, not quick really, it's more so like an hour, where like you and somebody at that company will pretty much hop on the phone and kind of like work through some questions together to just kind of gauge if like you're actually even like qualified to even come on site, to kind of make sure that you can, like, from my experience, like as being a backend engineer, it's more so gauge it, can you code, right? Because it doesn't make sense to fly people. I mean, this is before COVID, right? So a lot of this is based off like life before COVID, but it doesn't really make sense to spend all this money to fly you out to, a new city, put you up in these fancy hotels, and, take an hour out of like 4 to 5 engineers. Just like make sure that you're worth it on the company side, and then also that that you can kind of know what to expect if you do make it to the on-site, because pretty much most of the stuff that you're doing in the phone screen, you would have to apply those same kind of skills at the on-site. And so before you even like get to the phone screen, like I said, I'm trying to take you through the entire process. These are things that I do, have done, and will recommend. So before you even get to the phone screen, I say it's probably good to like take at least 4 weeks. And I use 4 weeks for like your average engineer. That's what I mean by average engineer. I would say like somebody with like some kind of CS background, where like you kind of either you took a boot camp or you went to school for it, but you probably haven't been interviewing in a long time. And so I would say take 4 weeks to just like brush up on your computer science knowledge and study those algorithms and big on notation. So some of these algorithms are like sorting, searching, dynamic programming, because all this stuff is like the basics, and they're all fair game in the interview process. And most engineers will actually use these questions because like a lot of times people just forget about the basics. Like I've seen people get like a question right at the interview, and we had time left over. So you might ask them something really basic about sorting, like, what's the runtime of merge sort? And like merge sort is like another algorithm, a famous one. And somebody gets that wrong. It's just like, you missed out on it because you don't know the basics. You got the question right, but you don't know the basics. It's just like how are you even an engineer? I hate to say it like that, but I mean, that's how it is. Another step you want to do is, select the program language, like figure out a program language that you're comfortable with for all your interviews, right? It can be Go, Java, C++, JavaScript, Python. My personal language of choice is always Python, because I feel like it takes me less lines of code to answer these problems, right? I feel like, honestly, the one I hate the most is either Java or C++. I've had to use them in the interview process, but I feel like it takes me a long time to kind of get what I'm trying to do done. See some questions coming in. And feel free to ask questions. I will try to answer them as I see them. And if I miss out on them, then I'll just kind of answer them at the end. Yeah, cool. So yeah, you just want to prepare. And then so some of the resources that I kind of encourage you to prepare with are some books. Introduction to Algorithms, I think, is a really good one. It kind of speaks to like how these algorithms works, kind of like the thought process behind these algorithms, so you can actually understand like how they work and also how to like implement them. I'm pretty sure you guys heard about this. Where I was in other sessions where like this book has been mentioned a lot. These tech in this interview, you want to get the latest edition because I feel like every edition she adds more and more stuff to it. So read that definitely. You want to use LeetCode. And by the way, if I'm saying things that like are not familiar to you or don't make sense you've never heard of before, like drop that in the chat and I can like explain more about it. LeetCode is another one. I use LeetCode for pretty much every time I'm preparing for interviews. Like I solely pretty much rely on LeetCode to like at least like get me started because I would say the majority of the questions that I see in interviews come from LeetCode. And it's usually mostly the medium problems. The easy ones, you maybe see them on phone screens, but the medium ones definitely like can show up on the phone screen or the on-site. You almost never, ever see the hard problems. Like you only do those if like you're just bored and you just want to kill some time. And those hard ones usually take more than an hour to do them. So that's why most interviewers don't ever really ask them in the interview process. Finally, the last resource is Pramp. So I'm pretty sure you guys have probably never heard of Pramp, but this is app. Google it, check it out. But pretty much they set you up with to allow you to do free mock interviews, or more so like free phone screen interviews. So pretty much you would like pick a block of time. You will pretty much go into it just like you go into like a real phone screen, and you would have some engineer like give you the question and pretty much simulate the whole interview process. And I say you want to do at least like 2 or 3 of those closer to like when your phone screen time is, because the phone screen is really the big game, but you don't want to like play the big game without any practice. You kind of want to go in there with as much preparation as possible. So these are like 4 like high level resources that I encourage you to prepare for this stage. But there are numerous sites out there. These are just like the 4 that I use and recommend and have shown me a lot of success. Finally, still not at the phone screen step yet, but preparing for it too, you want to make sure that you update your resume. You want to tailor this to the job description. So pretty much you want to make sure you look at the job description you're going for, look at your resume, and if you see like any technologies on that job description that you've worked on in the past, because what hiring managers are looking at is just like they're looking at pretty much like, if I was to select this candidate right now, could he or she kind of get in and get going, right? So like, you know what I'm saying, there is expected like ramp up time, but ideally like, do we have to like teach you everything, or can we at least like, do you have like some of the skill sets that require in your tool set? So that's 1. 2 is like figure out which companies you want to join, right? And this is very important for the negotiation part, but like you want to like come up with like, I would say at least like 3 to 5 companies, maybe more, that you want to just like really want to like start the process on. So what do I mean by start the process? The easiest way to actually get into these tech companies is referrals. I promise you it is. Like apply on the website, yeah, it's cool. You might get in, I'll admit, but like a referral, like it just like makes the process like 10 times faster. Because what happens is if an employee at that company refers you, that the mindset behind referrals is like good people know good people. So ideally, because let's say like you wanted to refer for Uber and I vouch for you and I have a good record at Uber, it was just like, well, Jay is pretty good and he is really recommending this person, so that person has to be really good, versus like finding someone out the street, like, you know what I'm saying, on the career website, and then having to like pretty much like go through their LinkedIn, figure out like they're a good match, look at their resume, and then, you know what I'm saying, do the phone screen. So referrals honestly is like how I pretty much got most, if not, except for one of my jobs. And you know what I'm saying, how I even start the interview process when I am looking for jobs. Another thing you want to do is attend events where the companies will be represented. So like things like Afrotech, Techsgiving, what else? I'm thinking about this other conference. It escapes me. But if you're in the Bay and you know what I'm saying, it's like Black History Month, like pretty much all these companies are doing these things, like these different events. But pretty much try to attend these events because you can kind of go there and network and figure out a way to kind of get in. You want to message recruiters on LinkedIn. So like if the first 2 things aren't options, like just reach out to recruiters, like cold email them, say like, hey, like I'm shooting this role, like how can I, you know what I'm saying, get an interview or like do a phone screen, like message them. And then finally, if all else fails, just apply on the website. Like I said, it's not impossible, but I would say like the referral process, like allows you to get like an interview like almost like within a week versus like applying on a website, you have to wait like months. And then pretty much know why you want to join the companies that you pick, right? So you want to figure out like why do you want to join like a Uber or Facebook or Google or Apple. And then I think I talked about this too, which is like looking over the job description. So that's pretty much all the preparation you would need. So pretty much you're just like fixing up your resume, finding companies you want to join, looking into your network or for referrals. If there's nobody in your network, then, you know what I'm saying, applying on a website. And then also while you're doing this, you want to be studying and getting ready for these interview questions. And I'm going to pause here and let me check for questions. I don't see any. Cool. All right, cool. Somebody with Premp, I'm surprised, like, is like really good. But yeah, Premp is actually amazing. I would definitely encourage you, especially if like you're thinking about like doing phone screens sometime in the future, like now, like go ahead and sign up and like do Premp and like go through like 2 of those, and it's all free. I want to know how to get paid, but I'll figure that out later. All right, finally we made it to step 1, which is the phone screen. So pretty much the structure of this phone interview is pretty much the first 5 minutes are just introduction. So it's like, hey, my name is so-and-so. They want to tell you what their name is. And then pretty much you have 30 to 40 minutes, give or take, to answer maybe like 1 to 2 problems. So usually the easier the problem is, the more likely you might have 2 problems instead of just 1. And so pretty much in those 30 to 40 minutes, they're going to give you a question, and your job is to come up with an algorithm and then code it up before your time is up. The next 10 to 15 minutes are just like to talk about your experience and ask questions. And so a lot of people just like, you'll be surprised, a lot of people just get done with the coding part and just like, cool, I'm good. I got the question, I got this in the bag, I'm good. But they don't ask no questions. You got to ask questions. I think interviews are a 2-way street. And I tell everybody I know that. So it's like, you need to ask questions to make sure like this is like a good fit for you, but then also ask questions so they can kind of like gauge your kind of thought process a little bit. Because at the end of the day, even though you might like this company, even though you might like Apple, right? You want to make sure that like it's a culture fit for you. You want to make sure that you actually want to be happy there. You want to make sure that you actually want to work with the people who are interviewing you, right? Like if they're jerks, you don't really want to work with them. So asking questions kind of will allow you some insight into like what it look like, agree to work for this company and actually on this team. And so I'm gonna skip the slide. I took it out, but like I was gonna leave it in there because like somebody wanted the slide. But pretty much these are just like questions that like I've been trained by my job to pretty much answer every time I do a phone screen. And so like I'm pretty much asking like, did they really understand the question? Did they make assumptions? Did they hear my hints? Did they test their code, right? So all those are like red flags, right? Like for example, if I ask you a question and you just immediately start coding, that's a red flag. Like you didn't really like clarify the question. We didn't walk through an example. I have no idea what you're doing. That's an automatic fail. If you, for example, if we get done at the end and you have an algorithm, but you don't test it, you're just like, hey, this is cool, but you don't like run through like other test cases or even think about edge cases. That's a red flag. That just lets me know like you're going to be that engineer that like codes up whatever we ask you to code up, but doesn't write any unit tests, doesn't make sure like it works for like these different edge cases, doesn't like really think through, you know what I'm saying, all the different like challenges for you know what I'm saying, the given situation or scenario. So this is that. I'm gonna skip over this for time's sake. And so high-level keys for the phone screen, like I said, is you want to make sure you fully understand the question. You also want to definitely be polite and energetic. Like I've known countless times, like there's this one person, I'm not gonna say what company they were from, but they were trying to come to Uber and super smart, like brilliant. And they pretty much came in, they got all the questions right. They got the question right. This was like a phone screen. And so like it was me and another person. I had another person shadowing me. And so they got everything right, but they were just so dead. They were just like they didn't seem like they were happy to be here. Didn't sound fun at all. We're just dead. We felt them. Like we felt them. We're just like if you want to come work here, like we need you to at least be some enthusiasm. Be happy to be here. I don't know why I'm saying all these words. Another thing is like make sure you start with the brute force solution. So like using those resources I told you to prepare for or use for preparation. You want to make sure that you understand what the brute force solution is for every problem. And so like, for example, if I gave you like a sorting problem, the easiest solution you can write would be to just like compare every element to another element. So like if I said like, hey, if I give you a list of words, sort them in alphabetical order, the easiest solution you can write is just like compare one to the other. And if one is smaller, or I'm saying, smaller than the other, you just sort it. And that would be like the brute force solution, and that would technically get the job done. But it's very inefficient, right? That would work for like a small list, maybe like 10 words. It would probably solve the problem really, right? That solution right there would probably take, a whole week before it completes. And, you don't really ever have that kind of time. Finally, after you have a brute force solution and you kind of state it, and then you want to make optimizations only after finding a solution. So a lot of people, and this is like a huge gem right here, a lot of people are trying to optimize during like their first run through of like their code. Like they're trying to like optimize and also like code out their solution. You don't want to do that. Take your time. Like get the brute force solution at least working first, and then worry about optimizations later. And then even if you run out of time, just state what optimizations. So like you would like, for example, like remove some code, or like, use a different data structure. Like you can state those things, and if you have time, you can also implement those. But don't try to optimize while you're coding. It's really going to like slow you down. It's going to confuse you, and honestly, it's probably going to make you not even like be able to answer the question in time. Finally, the last tip, and like this is really important too, but like make sure you ask questions at the end. Like prepare your questions, and I don't care what you ask, but like ask something. Don't just like hang up the phone after this phone screen. So like some sample ones that I have here is just like, how would you describe the culture at this company? Would be a good one that like helps you and them. Like, them telling you about the culture. So they're just like, hey, it's hectic. You're gonna, you won't have a social life. All right, that's the culture at this company. Is that a good fit for you? Maybe. You have to kind of like know yourself to kind of know if this is gonna be a good fit for you. Another one that I always ask, this is like my personal favorite, but like, what does a typical day look like for you? The reason why I love asking that question is because their typical day is going to look like your typical day, right? So I'm just like, hey, I'm in meetings all day. I don't get any work done. And then I'm expected to go home and do all my work. To some people, they might want that life. To me, I'm really for me. I'm saying I come in at 11. We have stand up at 12. I work from like 1 to 6, maybe some meetings here and there. And that's pretty much my day is. And like pretty much, some meetings. And then pretty much I was going to say something about Agile, but maybe you guys are familiar with that. But pretty much like how you get tax projects is another good question to ask. Like, how do you know what to work on? And they might be like, okay, we work with a product manager, and they kind of assign us like features. And then based off the features, I break it out. So like, for example, a feature for like the Uber app would be like implement the whole leave at door function. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with that and seeing that now. Where like if you order on Uber Eats, there's this button right now where you can like leave it at somebody's door. But that's probably a feature that, somebody had to rush to kind of implement because of COVID. And so it's just like how, like what things need to be done, tasks need to be done to actually get us to this step. Those are all the keys for the phone screen. Are there any questions about this phone screen process? Did I go through it too fast? Does it all make sense? Let me know. So here asks, are you actually writing and running code in the phone interview? Yes, you are. So typically what they're going to do is they're going to send you a link to something like CoderPad. There are other resources or apps that, companies use, or HackerRank. And pretty much they're going to expect you to write code in the language of your choice. And also it has to run. That's a great question. Denise asks, what basic info should be mentioned? Great question. I would say something like your current, like where you are currently. So like if you're in school, mention that you're in school. If you are at a company, mention that you're at a company. Mention maybe like some past experience. And then what else would I mention? I think that's pretty much it. Like it shouldn't be too long. It should be like a high level, like 30 seconds to a minute. Just like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I currently do this. And it's a pleasure to meet you today. And thank you for taking the time out. Like literally, like it can be that quick. And they'll pretty much do the same thing. And you'll have more questions at the end to kind of like go into to ask more questions and also talk about maybe like your experience with theirs, or if you have any questions. Chad asks, I did a coding assessment and the company required people to score at 90%. I scored at 70%, 75%. One of the questions I got wrong was halfway correct, but they wanted the algorithm dynamic for the user to put in the hard data. That just destroyed me. How do you increase your skills for assessments or codability challenges? Again, repetition. You have to pretty much just like keep doing these questions, keep getting out there. Like we can look at this and say this was like a setback. Honestly, like it probably made you stronger because like now next time the question gets asked you again, you probably don't know how to do it. And it's like the more practice you get, the more interviews you do, the better you get at this. Hopefully that answered your question, Chad. But there's a saying that some guys at work joke about, but it's just like a couple leak code questions a day keeps unemployment away, right? So like pretty much for these software engineering, you know what I'm saying, front end, back end, infrastructure roles, it's all the pretty much the bar to get into these roles is leak code or like those coding questions. Cool. All right. So we'll move on to the next step then. Oh, sorry, I clicked somewhere. So pretty much, sorry, you guys. So pretty much the next step is the on-site. So ideally by this time you pass the phone screen. Most companies have maybe 1 to 2 phone screens. If you get 2 phone screens, don't get worried. Usually maybe it could be 1 or 2 things. Either like the interview can get a good signal on you. So like they weren't sure if we should, you know what I'm saying, fly you out. So they probably want to do just another one to make sure that it makes sense. Or, you know what I'm saying, like most companies actually maybe do 2, like just like routine thing. But ideally you get past the phone screen and now you're at the on-site. And so it's like the on-site is a little bit different than the phone screen. One is in person, or it was in person. Now instead of on-site, it's online, right? So pretty much the way they're doing it with COVID is now you would have the on-site split into like 2 days, I believe it is. And pretty much it will be just like this, where like I think your video has to actually be on, and then you pretty much do the phone screen, but now it's your video on, and instead of just one, you pretty much have to do like maybe like 3 or 4, so maybe split over like 1 to 2 days. But these tips are more so like for like life after COVID and maybe and like obviously before COVID. So pretty much, again, before the on-site, you want to do some things you in the on-site, like people will look at your resume and ask you questions from your resume. So everything on your resume is fair game. So if it's on your resume, they can ask about it. It could be something from 2011. If it's the only thing, I can talk about it. And if you can't speak to it, that's a red flag. Again, keep doing your lead code questions. I think at this point, forget all the easy stuff. Like you're not probably getting easy questions on the on-site. So just stick to the medium ones. Continue reading that interview Bible, cracking the coding interview. This one's super important. You want to start practicing on the whiteboard. So at the on-site, I know Kira just asked about like, are you expected to like write and run code? Yeah, on the phone screen, yeah. But at the on-site, you're pretty much writing your code on the whiteboard and it doesn't really have to run. So, well, it's no way it runs on the whiteboard, right? But you got to really get familiar with like just like writing everything out on the whiteboard. So you have to know like the syntax. You won't have any like helpers. Like, you know what I'm saying? Most IDEs nowadays, they like, if you start typing, they pretty much auto-populate, you know what I'm saying, the function that you're probably looking for. You don't have that. So you have to get really, really good with just like coding all your solutions on a whiteboard. So that's pretty much the biggest one. Another thing is to like look at Glassdoor. So pretty much go to Glassdoor, go to that company, look at the role, look at the interviews, and pretty much they have like interview questions in Glassdoor. I would try to solve all those questions because most companies, including Uber, they have an approved question bank that they can ask during these interviews because we're trying to make it fair, or most companies try to make it fair. So it wouldn't be fair if like this one engineer at Uber like comes in and like asks questions like nobody's ever like used before, because then it's like, how can we like accurately rate the candidate? So if chances are if the question's been used before in Glassdoor, there's a high chance that it will be used again. So try to work all the questions on Glassdoor. And then finally, reach out to people who work there to ask questions. So like you have friends there, reach out to them and maybe ask for any tips or like things that, you know what I'm saying, you should be mindful of at the on-site. And then some more resources to prepare. So like I mentioned before, Glassdoor, Top Coder, Leak Code, I should take out the easy part, and then cracking the coding interview. So ideally, you probably spent maybe, I think from the phone screen to the on-site, it's usually like within like 1 to 2 weeks, depending on like when you're free and when they can kind of get you scheduled in. And so from that time, ideally, you've been like doing now you're not even doing questions on, leak code anymore. You're doing leak code questions, but you're not probably writing them inside leak code. Now you're probably doing them on the whiteboard. And same thing for cracking the coding interview. You probably get like some sheet of paper and like start writing out your answers like on paper instead of like in an IDA. Pretty much, I think on-site's a lot different than the phone screen, but pretty much you have 3 to 4 coding questions. You have 1 system design question, and you have maybe like 1 to behavioral/culture fit questions. And I'll kind of dive into those right now. So those behavioral, those are just like questions that employers ask to figure out, like how you would act in certain situations, or like when you have in those situations. Like the good one would be like, name a time when like you had a conflict with your manager, right? You want to say like, hey, like, I cussed him out. That's not what you want to say at all. You want to show that like you had it, you went through that, you had it, you guys kind of came to like some kind of middle ground, and it was smooth sailing after that. For system design questions, system design is honestly based on system design questions. Sorry, checking time. System design questions are based on like your level. So like if you're a new grad or like going for an entry level position, you probably won't get a system design question. But if you have, I would say at least like 2 years of experience, the chance of you getting a system design question is actually pretty high. And so pretty much those system design questions are like high level open-ended questions. Like there isn't a wrong answer in these system design questions. And they're usually framed as like, how would you design product X? So like, for example, a good one will be like, how would you design Airbnb? Maybe that's kind of broad, right? So another thing would be like, hey, you design the login system for the Uber app, right? And so ideally, as you're walking through these problems, you're discussing like, how would you do it? And then also listing out why you would do it this way, right? And so the way to get good at these questions is you have to start studying systems and like learning more and more about how things work. So like when you see a company or like any app, something like that, try to think about like, how that backend is kind of working. Finally, are the coding questions. These are pretty much the same things from the phone screen, where it's just like, they're going to range from like data structures, general logic-based questions. Like everything's fair game here. So like you can get something like those leak code questions. You can get something like, hey, implement a hash map from scratch. Like everything's fair game. So those are the type of questions you'll kind of get. And then these next couple slides, I'll just kind of go through like some tips, high-level tips about like what you should do. First, I'll start with the coding one, which would just be like talk, like I said, like make sure like you get comfortable like coding on the whiteboard. And like if you don't remember anything else, but like make sure you're talking as you're writing on the whiteboard. So you want to, you want to make sure that like it's never silent. Like there's never like any moment of silence there. Like you're pretty much always talking as you're on the whiteboard, like telling that interviewer everything that's going through your mind. And the reasoning for that is because like they can it helps them gauge your thought process. If they think you need help or hints, they know when to like give you a hint or a hint or two. And then also it allows them to kind of keep up, because if I'm just watching somebody like code on the whiteboard, I have no idea what you're doing if like it's totally quiet. So, and like if we're going to be working together, we have to make sure that we can collaborate. And so a big component of collaboration is communication. So that is something that you have to be doing during this interview. The final 2 things would be like optimize your solution. Same thing as the phone screen, like only optimize after you get a solution working and you have time. And then also test your solution. So I have like 15 minutes left. Let me make sure I'm getting to some of these questions. You also your solution. And then pretty much like I did before, like these are like questions that like the interviewer has to ask when they're like filling out the review for you. Same thing for design. So design is open-ended. So pretty much you want to think about the problem. So like I said, like if you have to implement the logging system for like the Uber app, how would you do it? Why would you do it, right? So if you're saying like, hey, I would use email password, right? Why? like make sure you got for like you put in your phone number, they text you a code, you hit submit, and that kind of logs you in. That's another logging system. So like, why would you use email and password versus like the pin form of login? So, and then you have to be able to like talk about those trade-offs. And this like a lot of this is really going to have to like leverage like your knowledge and expertise. And again, it's like some assessment strategies, like pretty much what they have to kind of like when they're reviewing you, what they have to kind of like fill out is just like, hey, did the person understand the problem? Did they make good design decisions? Did they need a lot of guidance? Was the candidate able to like identify issues with their design? That's really important, right? Because like not everything that everything that any engineer does is never perfect. Like there's always some cons, and like being able to like talk about that and speak to that is perfect. Finally, at these things, I'll be able to just like talk about like a situation. You want to make sure like you have like 1 to 3 stories or think about like 1 to 3 projects and have stories based on those projects about like conflicts, when you have to like get a group to like rally to see your point of view, talk about like managers, stuff like that. And then a good way to answer these questions is like using the STAR method. So if you don't know what the STAR method is, I would tell you to Google it, but it basically stands for situation, task, action, result. So pretty much when you're answering these questions, you want to frame it in that way. So finally, some keys for the onsite. Like I said before, throughout this whole process, be polite, energetic, and positive. I've seen countless people fail because they weren't positive or they weren't energetic. Like coming in and bashing like your former employee is not cool. Be confident, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're not confident, then you know what I'm saying, it's not gonna look good for you. Make sure you get the proper rest. Like this is a long process, right? It's gonna be a full day of like interviews. Like you're gonna be talking a lot. So you wanna make sure that you are, you know what I'm saying, you got some food in your system and that you're getting rest. And then the last 2 I've talked about them before, but those optimizations, and then always ask questions at the end. So yeah, let me check for questions really quickly. Chat asks, I want to collaborate with COVID-19. I notice a lot of candidates with expertise experience are considered over me. What are ways that freelancers can be considered equally amongst the competition? That's a good question. I would say get a GitHub and maybe like put some of your work in GitHub, and then put your GitHub link in your resume. I've like at Uber, we look at people's GitHub all the time, and I go through them all the time, and I'm like, oh, this person worked on something cool. Because then like it's also showing me like a way like how you would actually like if we were working in the same repo, how in that repo like separate it. I can kind of see like you have those good programming skills. That's one thing. There are more to it, and I guess if you have more questions, just reach out to me, whether on LinkedIn or you know what I'm saying, or email me or whatever. Denise asks, how do you recover from interview mishap or situation when you begin to discover that the position is not a good fit? Interview mishap or situation when you've been to like. So Denise, are you saying like you don't want the position anymore, or are you saying that like you messed up during the interview? Both. Okay. If you don't want the position anymore, just ghost them. No, I'm just playing. Don't do that. But if you don't want the position anymore, just you know what I'm saying, still try to do the best of your ability, but at the end of the day, just like tell the recruiter that after the interview, say like, hey, like I don't think this is a good fit anymore. I didn't like the people I met, or you know what I'm saying. If there's a real reason why you don't want to work there anymore, let that recruiter know so they can kind of fix, especially like it's their fault. And if you make a mistake, it's all cool. Like you're not expected to be perfect the whole time. You just kind of you are expected to at least like kind of at least get to the solution eventually within that 30, 40 minutes. So like you start off bad, but then you are able to recover and fix it. That's perfect. And just as long as you're talking and letting people know like, oh snap, I made this mistake. This is apologies. Let me fix it. Like you're calling that out and you're like being able to recognize that. That's perfect. That's honestly a good quality in an engineer. How do you manage stress from your job and how do you stay on top of deadlines? How do I manage stress? There's a book actually on it. It's called Peak Performance. But pretty much what you want to do is you want to enjoy your time away from work. So pretty much work can't always consume all aspects and all areas of your life. Otherwise, you probably won't be happy. So a good way to manage stress is like get some good friends around you, get you some good people around you, do some fun things, and you know what I'm saying, take those PTO days. Like a lot of these tech companies, they have unlimited PTO. That's BS. It's not really unlimited. But take those days. Like a lot of people don't take their PTO days, and make sure you're taking your breaks. And then how do you stay on top of deadlines? Pretty much I'm really good with time management. So like that's always been like one of my strong suits. But pretty much I'll like kind of come up with like a high level plan of like how you want to get something done and estimate and I got this from one of my mentors, but estimate how long each part will take you. And so when people are asking you, and especially in tech, they will do this a lot. Like, you know what I'm saying? Something might take 2 weeks, like really it might take 2 weeks and people want it really quickly. They'd be like, hey, you can get it done in a week. And then you're staying up late at night, stressing yourself out, trying to get it done, and you don't get it done. And it's because like they had these expectations that weren't realistic. And so you have to make sure that you're setting realistic expectations. So whenever somebody gives you something, make sure you're telling them like, hey, this is going to take me this long because of this reason, right? And make sure you also put some buffer room in there, right? So if you know it's going to take you 3 days, make sure that you say 5, right? Because if you say 3 and it don't happen in 3 because of like something that's out of your control, then you know what I'm saying, then you're looking stupid. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself some buffer time. Cool. Those are all the questions I see right now. I will go back to the interview. So after the interview, you want to pretty much thank your recruiters and tell your recruiter to thank all your interviewers for taking the time out. That's really important. That's clear. If you're not interested, make sure that's also clear. And ideally after this point, hopefully you receive the offer. So ideally you get the offer, right? But so like that's pretty much the interview process for like a lot of these software engineering roles. And that's pretty much standard. But a lot of people don't do this part, right? So it's like the main part of this talk that I want to share, and like I talk with like my friends about this, everything like that, is how to secure the bag, right? So a lot of times at least the most of this will get you a job, but it won't help you secure the bag, right? And so the first part is you want to pretty much rinse and repeat all the steps we talked about, the phone screen, the on-site, all that, like 1 to 3 times. What I mean by that, I mean, you want to like be working, I talked about this earlier, but you want to be doing this with like at least 3 companies at the same time. Ideally, you have those offers rolling in, right? Like DJ Khaled said, like another one, right? Like another one. Like, and ideally, like once you get really, really good at interviews, doing them, especially when it's all fresh in your mind, becomes easy. So you want to make sure that you're doing as many of them as possible. And then ideally, once you get the offers, you want to analyze them, right? And so you want to basically calculate your total compensation, right? And so what do I mean by that? So in tech, you're paid. There are different dimensions to like, there are different facets to like how you're paid, right? So you have your base salary, but then you also have like equity, you have your sign-on bonus, you might have your equity refresh, right? So like all those numbers are different. So ideally, and I got this from another mentor of mine, when you're analyzing an offer, you kind of want to make a spreadsheet and analyzing them and also comparing them. You want to make a spreadsheet of how much money you make over the next 4 years. Why do I say 4 years? Because most tech companies, when they're giving you equity, it usually best over 4 years, right? With like that 1 year cliff. So basically like the first year you don't get any equity because you haven't hit your 1 year anniversary. But after that first year, or like on your 1 year anniversary, you get 25% of the equity and the remaining 75 is vested equally over 3 years. So ideally when you're doing this, you want to pretty much know how much you're going to be making every single year. And then also, if depending on the company you work for, you want to also factor in those benefits and perks, right? Like I know Airbnb, if you work at Airbnb, you get like free travel to like, you know what I'm saying, to go stay at different Airbnbs and travel outside of the United States. Yeah, I was mad too. If you work at Uber, you get free Uber rides, you get free Uber Eats, you get like a nice little stipend. If you work for Apple, you probably get like a discounted, you know what I'm saying, Apple Gear. Like every company like has benefits and perks. So make sure you factor in like the cash value of those things because those are important. And like I just talked about equity before, but if it is involved, make sure you understand what type of equity you're getting, right? So like the 2 most common ones are RSUs and stock options. So RSUs, much high level difference between them. RSUs pretty much granted to you, pretty much free of charge, and then stock options is more so like they're granted to you, but you have to pay for them. And that's another discussion, but pretty much those are like high level differences. If you have more, just kind of Google those, like RSUs versus stock options, and like millions of articles about like the two. And this is important. I think somebody asked a question about this earlier, but like if you're going to a company that isn't publicly traded, so it's not like an Uber or a Tesla or Microsoft or Google, let's pretend it's Figma, for example. right? You want to ask about their 409A valuation. And that's really important. And this is like a gem too. Like, especially if you think about going to startup, where pretty much a 409A valuation is kind of like what, I'm saying, others, I think, I'm saying Wall Street and the government think this company is valued at. And so when they're giving you equity, if they're giving you like 3,000 shares, something like that, they have to give you a price associated with that. And so that price is based off of their 409A valuation, right? So like, for example, let's pretend you joined Airbnb before they IPO this week. Chances are when they gave you that initial equity, they didn't really have a fair market value price because they're not on the stock market, and they didn't IPO yet. So they had to probably use their 409A valuation. So if they said like, hey, I want to give you 1,000 shares at the 409A valuation of like, let's say $10, you know what I'm saying? Then you can understand like how much you would make every single year. Like 25% of that would be in the first year. And then, the rest, the other 75 would be in the other 3 years, equally vest over the next 3 years. Yeah. So the first thing you want to do is analyze your offers and make sure and know how to compare them. The second thing you want to do, and this is really important, you want to negotiate your offer. And the ways to negotiate these offers is to make sure you, one, have more than one. I tell her, like, ideally have more than one, because then you can kind of create a bidding war for you. Like, know your worth, right? You're like worth a lot. And like a lot of people don't negotiate, just sign it. And like recruiters, and I'll say this pretty quickly and then I'll kind of wrap it up, but pretty much recruiters, they have a budget of like a role. And so ideally, if I can get Michael Jordan, let's pretend I'm trying to hire Michael Jordan, right? And the budget for it is like somewhere between 100K, 100 and 150K. If I can land Michael Jordan at 100K, I'm gonna do it. If you don't ask, if you don't say anything, if you don't ask for more money, anything like that, it's no harm, no foul. Like 50K actually for the next person, right? But if he asks for more money, he's entitled to that. And so by negotiating, you can get more money. And things to help you do these is to like use some of these resources I put here. Blind is an app that all they do is talk about total comp. So like if it's a public company, pretty much you can kind of like see what people are making there. Glassdoor is another one. I don't really like Glassdoor like package. And so like a lot of times when you, especially for startups, they don't have a lot of cash on hand. So like the base salaries might not be as high. So you also want to look at kind of like that. This H1b Salary Database. So pretty much, long story short, pretty much what this means is like people who have to come from overseas and work at companies, if they're being sponsored, the companies have to report the salary that they're at least paying them, just the base salary, to the government. And so like this is a database of them. So like you can kind of see exactly how much your peers are making in real time. And then also my favorite one, this is actually like an app that was made for all this, is like Levels, FYI. And so pretty much like you can go in there, you kind of like see how much every level, like the average of every level. And you want to make sure that your offers are like very similar to these, if not more. And then finally, this is like another gem, especially if like planning on coming to the Bay or California, is know your state employment laws, right? Like this is something like a couple of my friends shared with me recently that I didn't even know, because like I had jobs in different states. But like if you come to California and you get a job in California, they're required by law. Nope, especially if you ask for it, right? They're not going to tell you about it, but they're required by law to tell you the minimum and maximum amount they pay for this role. So like it's called the salary band. They have to tell you that. And so the minute they tell you that, you kind of already know where you stand. And so if, like, for example, somebody's saying like, hey, the salary band for this is like between like 150 and 180, and they offer me 150, like, of course I'm gonna ask for more. Like, why am I at the low end? Like, ask for more. And then finally, basically some negotiation tips, right? One I didn't put in here, but like the worst they can say is no, right? Like they will never take the offer again away. They won't ever like resend it because you asked for more. They won't ever do that. Make sure you're polite. Some things that you can negotiate is your base salary, your sign-on bonus, your annual bonus, your equity, your days off. This is me, I personally refrain from giving exact numbers. It's like I don't say like, hey, I want 185K. That's not what I do. I pretty much, if I wanted 185, I would say something like I want it to be between like 180 and 195, right? And ideally, because they're negotiating too, they'll probably just like land on my number. But providing like exact numbers isn't really smart in my opinion. And then if you need time, especially like when they first give you the offer, always use other people as decision makers. So what do I mean by that? I mean, like if you need time to think it over, or you want to like go back to like, you know what I'm saying, the negotiation drawing board, tell that recruiter that you're working with, like, hey, let me talk it over, like, you know what I'm saying, my family. Is it okay if I email you back, you know what I'm saying, tomorrow or the next day? So don't ever feel like you're rushing this whole process. Like take your time. Everybody's kind of like on your schedule, because at the end of the day, good engineers are hard to find. And so if you are able to get the job, be flown out. They spend honestly thousands of dollars to fly you out and interview and spend all that time. If you make it past all that, you have all the leverage there, because like it's not like they find these people like every single day, believe it or not. And that kind of concludes my talk. So pretty much listening. If you have any questions, drop them. I'll try to answer them like right now. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. I know you can't click this link, but I will actually drop my link in the chat. And yeah. Cool. Appreciate you doing culture. Verbal. Can you share tips to help improve verbal communication skills, please? I think, yeah, I might have to hit you up after, but working with other people and talking with other people in a professional setting will improve. I think it personally will improve your verbal communication skills, because then you kind of learn, like as you're explaining things, as you're talking through things, you understand how well people easily understand you. And so if they're giving you feedback saying like, hey, like for example, like a problem that I have or I've heard is like I talk way too fast. It's like my mind is just always moving. And so like I've had feedback which is like, hey, like you have to kind of slow it down for me. I think the same can that's like something that I kind of improved in my communication skills. So like the more you do it, especially like in a professional setting, I'm not saying like, I'm saying talk to your friends. That's not a professional setting. I'm saying like more so like get in those professional settings and tell people like, hey, give me feedback, right? On like, how do you think, how well I explain this? And that should help you improve. So that was Dane. Chad asks, how do you manage continue learning in side projects? So I actually love side projects. I don't even call them side projects, more so like companies that I've started with friends that require like the same skill set that like I used in my 9 to 5. And this industry is always like changing, right? So like you always have to be learning. And so the best way to actually learn is by coming up with a small project where you can like apply this new technology to it, right? So for example, like something that's out right now that's pretty cool that a lot of people are like right now is like Kubernetes and Spinnaker, right? Well, going and reading a book about it, some people will get it, right? Depending on what type of learner you are. But I'm a hands-on learner. It's like a good way for me to learn more and more about it is to actually like try to do something with one of my side projects and this technology, get stuck, something break, and then it forced me to kind of learn more. I know someone who says we're broken to tech field, they look at my freelance situation, which they can do what I do. I'm like, I need a job. But I learned from what she get into tech work-life balance. It does. I know what I want, but from an experienced person, how do you manage side projects yourself? So what I do personally, and I'm always working, what she said is true, like pretty much your 9 to 5 isn't really just all 8 hours, like pretty much you can be expected to work more. But because like my projects and the companies that I'm a part of a lot, and you have to be passionate about it. You have to, after like spending 8, 9, 10 hours at your 9 to 5, you have to be able to like take a nap, take a break, reset, and then go log back on. And you know what I'm saying? I try to at least get 4 hours in on my company every single day. Like I try to do like sessions. And so ideally I'm getting something done. So that's personally how I do it. Another way that I've heard people do it is like just working on the weekends. So like, you know what I'm saying, like doing everything on the weekends. But depending on how advanced your company is or like what stage you're in, that might not be enough time for you to really get things done. So yeah, giving salary ranges versus exempt numbers when negotiating keys. Thank you, Kyle. Quincy, great talk. Thank you, Quincy. This was very helpful, practical. Thank you. I appreciate all the tips. No problem. I'm happy to help. If you need anything else, just, you know what I'm saying, reach out to me. I just dropped my LinkedIn in the chat, so feel free to like connect with me. And yeah, hold up, last one. Apologize if I butcher your name, Iskra. I know you focus on in-person on sites, but could you share some thoughts about how to put your best foot forward when interviewing online? Also, for compensation, some companies are investing in remote/home offices. Are those perks negotiable as well? They are. They are. I've seen somebody actually do it and they got way more. And that's just by asking. Literally, that's just by asking. Same thing with relocation, actually. I didn't even mention that too, but you can actually negotiate your relocation bonus too. So those are, and then to answer your first question, Interviewing online, just make sure like you come to it and I think you have to have your camera on, so like look the part, look, you know what I'm saying, like you want to be here. Don't like wake up out of bed and just like roll over and just turn your screen on. Make sure it's kind of like quiet and clear, like people can actually like really hear you. And pretty much the same things kind of apply. Actually, I think it's a little bit easier, especially for like the people who don't like talking, to just like do like these online interviews, because then it's just like the phone screen, it's just like you're just typing it in, and then you don't really have to check your syntax or anything like that. You have the helper, so like you don't have to worry about like doing everything with just like a whiteboard and like a marker. So as far as putting your best foot forward, I would just say like make sure just like your environment and how you present yourself all look the part. So if like, you know what I'm saying, you can't take the call at home, try to get to like a post COVID, you can't even go anywhere now. I would say like Starbucks, something like that, but nowadays like Starbucks is closed, libraries are closed. So but ideally not a lot of like noise and stuff like that. Hopefully that answered your question. And yeah, I think that completes my talk. If you have any more questions, I'll be here for like another 5 minutes. If not, I hope that you guys continue to go to sessions. A lot of gems being dropped all weekend. Shout out to the Textgiving family for like putting this on. I think this is like really dope. I'm going to go into some sessions. I've already been to some sessions, but like it's a lot of insight from like a lot of people who are actually in the industry right now today. And like everybody's background is different. So like whether you went to school, whether you did a boot camp, whether you're just starting, whether you've been in the game 10 years, right? I think we can all learn from each other. So yeah. Cool, guys. Let me stop sharing my screen. What language code in? So at Uber, everything's in Go. So if you work at Uber, learn Go. Netflix, everything's in Java. So like the language that I code in right now is Go, just because like they require me to use it every day. So I got really good with that language. But I would say every company is different. So like I use Go. So I would say pick your language, one based off like what you're most comfortable with, right? So that's like number one thing, especially when you do interviews, like pick the language you're most comfortable. I don't care what they tell you. And then two, ideally, if you see a language that you're comfortable with and that they're looking for, like let's say Java or C++, try to use that. The reason for that is because it helps you stand out a little bit more than other candidates. Because as you're doing this, ideally you're doing this for multiple companies, they also have maybe like 3 or 4 candidates coming in looking for the same role too. So no. I hated Bash when I first learned it, but it's just practice. It's another thing. It's just like a lot of times when you're using Bash and like not doing a lot of high level things, you're just kind of like doing some scripting stuff. It's like, but I think the more you use it and the more you have to apply it, the better you get at it. JavaScript, Python, and Bash. Yeah, JavaScript and Python are perfect. What language did you start with, and was it hard to transition into the other? So like I started actually with, believe it or not, C. And so C was like bare bones, like wasn't no classes, wasn't no hash maps, like it was just ugly. And and so actually like because I started off with C and I feel like life was hard with C, going to Java was it's a different way of thinking, but I'm just like, like this ain't that bad. Like I don't have to worry about like cleaning up like your variables, garbage collection, you know what I'm saying, compiling your code, stuff like that. I'm just like, so like if you're transitioning to another language, it's always like a ramp up, but that ramp up time depends on just like how hard the language is, right? I think C honestly is like one of the hardest languages out there, just because it's so different than all the other ones. C is ugly and scary. I agree. Yes, and Apple still builds apps with C. And the reason why people still use C is because it's the fastest one, right? So like Java, for example, and I guess I'm kind of going like a little bit in depth about these things, right? But like there are a lot of advantages to using C that make sense from an engineering standpoint that you probably won't see when you're just writing the code. Rust. I've never heard of Rust. Let me Google that real quick. Is it Rust, Ruby? I've never heard the language Rust. Let me see. Yeah, use Rust. I can't speak on it. But yeah, every language has its own like pros and cons, right? So like I'm more so about C to like a lot of legacy stuff. Like we're working on like legacy projects. A lot of those could have been written in C, and it probably take too much time to like redo it again in another language. So like for example, a lot of companies still use C. Cool. There is a panel that's about to start. I believe it's on the stage. I could be wrong, but I just got the word that they want people to start transitioning out of this room and more so to the panel. It's going to be dope. But thank you guys for attending. Hopefully you guys like learn something. Some gems, if not a lot of gems. If you have any questions, if you want the PowerPoint, if there's anything I can do, just like reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know.